In the early hours of a sweltering morning, the taps ran dry across neighborhoods that had never imagined such a moment would come. Kitchens, hospitals, factories, mosques, and schools all shared the same silence: no water. For nearly 15 million people, this was not a temporary disruption or a routine maintenance failure. It was the beginning of a crisis years in the making, now unfolding all at once. Iran, a nation with a civilization shaped by ancient water engineering and desert survival, found itself facing one of the most severe water emergencies in its modern history. For decades, warnings had been issued by scientists, environmentalists, and even some officials. Aquifers were being overdrawn, rivers were shrinking, lakes were vanishing, and rainfall patterns were changing. Yet, life continued as if water were endless. Expanding cities demanded more supply, agriculture consumed the majority of available resources, and aging infrastructure leaked away what little remained. When the system finally buckled, it did so with breathtaking speed, leaving millions without access to the most basic necessity of life. In Tehran and surrounding regions, the scale of the problem became impossible to ignore. Tankers lined the streets, rationing schedules were announced and revised repeatedly, and citizens queued for hours under the sun with plastic containers. Social media filled with videos of empty reservoirs, cracked riverbeds, and desperate residents arguing over limited supplies. What had once been an abstract environmental concern turned into a daily struggle for survival. Water is not just another utility. It is the foundation of public health, economic activity, and social stability. Without it, hospitals cannot function safely, sanitation systems collapse, and food production grinds to a halt. In Iran's largest urban centers, the absence of reliable water immediately threatened vulnerable populations: children, the elderly, and those with medical conditions. Even a short-term shortage can trigger outbreaks of disease. But this crisis showed signs of becoming prolonged, pushing authorities into emergency mode. The roots of this disaster stretch far back in time. Iran's climate has always been arid to semi-arid, with highly uneven rainfall distribution. Historically, communities adapted through qanats, carefully managed irrigation, and strict water-sharing traditions. In the modern era, however, rapid population growth and industrial expansion placed unprecedented pressure on natural systems. Large dams were constructed to control rivers and support agriculture, but many of them disrupted natural flows and reduced downstream replenishment. Groundwater extraction accelerated, often without proper regulation, causing water tables to fall year after year. Climate change intensified these pressures. Rising temperatures increased evaporation, reduced snowpack in mountainous regions, and altered seasonal rainfall. Droughts became more frequent and more severe. What was once considered a dry year became the new normal. Reservoirs that once provided a buffer against scarcity now struggled to refill, even after relatively wet seasons. Each year, the margin for error shrank. Agriculture, the backbone of rural livelihoods and a major employer, consumed the majority of Iran's water resources. Traditional irrigation methods wasted large volumes, while intensive crops were cultivated in regions ill-suited to them. Attempts at reform faced resistance, as farmers feared losing their income and communities feared economic collapse. As a result, change came slowly, if at all, while the water continued to disappear underground. Urban areas faced their own challenges. Aging pipelines leaked enormous amounts of treated water before it ever reached households. Illegal connections and unmonitored usage further strained the system. As cities expanded outward, New developments demanded water that simply did not exist. Instead of reducing consumption, authorities often sought new sources, drilling deeper wells or diverting water from distant regions, shifting the burden rather than solving the problem. These interregional transfers sparked tensions within the country. Communities that saw their rivers redirected or their aquifers depleted protested what they viewed as unfair treatment. Demonstrations over water rights erupted in several provinces over the years, sometimes turning violent. Water, once a shared resource, became a source of conflict, exposing deep social and political fractures. When the current crisis hit, the response was immediate but strained. Emergency measures included water rationing, mobile distribution units, and public appeals to reduce consumption. Officials urged citizens to shorten showers, delay car washing, and reuse water where possible. While these steps helped slow the decline, they could not reverse the underlying shortage. The scale of demand far exceeded the available supply. The economic consequences were swift. Industries reliant on water, from food processing to manufacturing, were forced to reduce operations or shut down temporarily. Workers faced layoffs or reduced hours, adding financial stress to an already difficult situation. Small businesses, unable to absorb the costs of water delivery or production delays, struggled to survive. Inflationary pressures increased as food prices rose due to reduced agricultural output. Healthcare systems faced unique challenges. Without consistent water supply, maintaining hygiene standards became difficult. Hospitals and clinics had to prioritize critical services, sometimes postponing non-emergency procedures. In areas where water quality deteriorated due to low pressure or contamination, the risk of waterborne diseases increased, threatening to turn a resource crisis into a public health emergency. Psychologically, the impact was profound. Water scarcity is not just a physical hardship. It creates constant anxiety. Families worried about how they would cook, clean, or care for children. The simple act of turning on a tap became a moment of tension and uncertainty. Trust in institutions eroded as promises of quick fixes failed to materialize, and frustration mounted with each passing day. International observers watched closely, aware that water crises rarely remain contained within borders. Regional instability, migration pressures, and economic disruptions can spill over, affecting neighboring countries. Iran's situation served as a stark reminder that water security is national security, and that environmental mismanagement can have far-reaching geopolitical consequences. Yet, even in the midst of crisis, there were signs of resilience. Communities organized local distribution efforts, neighbors shared supplies, and volunteers assisted the elderly and disabled. Engineers and scientists proposed emergency technical solutions, from desalination expansion to wastewater recycling. Some of these measures offered hope, but they required time, investment, and political will. Long-term solutions would demand fundamental change. Water pricing reforms improved efficiency in agriculture, modernization of infrastructure, and strict regulation of groundwater extraction were no longer optional. Public awareness campaigns needed to go beyond temporary conservation messages, fostering a cultural shift in how water is valued and used. Without such changes, any relief achieved would be temporary at best. The crisis also forced a reckoning with development priorities. For years, growth had been pursued without fully accounting for environmental limits. Now, those limits were asserting themselves in the most basic way possible. The question facing the nation was not simply how to restore water to the taps, but how to build a future that did not repeat the same mistakes. As days turned into weeks, the reality set in that this was not an isolated incident, but a turning point. 15 million people without water was not just a headline, it was a warning. It revealed the fragility of systems once assumed to be stable and the cost of ignoring long-term risks for short-term gains. History shows that societies can adapt, but adaptation requires honesty, cooperation, and sacrifice. Iran's ancient engineers once mastered the art of surviving in harsh environments through careful planning and respect for natural limits. Whether modern society can rediscover that wisdom remains uncertain, what is clear is that the age of abundance, or at least the illusion of it, is over. Water can no longer be taken for granted. Every drop now carries weight, symbolizing both the mistakes of the past and the choices of the future. As the crisis continues to unfold, one truth stands above all others. Without decisive action, today's emergency could become tomorrow's permanent reality. The story of 15 million people without water is not just Iran's story. It is a glimpse into a future that many regions around the world may soon face. Climate change, population growth, and environmental mismanagement are converging, turning water scarcity into one of the defining challenges of the 21st century. How this crisis is handled will not only shape Iran's future, but also serve as a lesson for the world. In the end, water is life. When it disappears, everything else begins to unravel. The biggest crisis has indeed begun, but whether it becomes a catastrophe or a catalyst for change depends on what happens next.